Class, we're back and we are now in our week 7. We are still on our module 3. So, last meeting, we have discussed to you our week 6 topic about our module 3. Our topic is forecasting. Now, in our module 3, lesson number 4 and lesson number 5, we'll be discussing more about the different steps in forecasting and the approaches to forecasting. Okay, so we now start with our discussion on lesson number 4, steps in forecasting. So there are different steps in forecasting. No? There are 6 steps. So these 6 basic steps in forecasting determines whether how will we able to use this forecasting. Okay, paano natin gagamitin yung forecasting ito? Because forecasting is not only used through the weather, but also we focus on our we focus forecasting on our operations, okay, on our day-to-day operations in the business organization. Now, the first basic step is to determine the purpose of the forecast. Okay, here are some questions: how will it be used and when will it be needed? Okay, so paano natin gagamitin ang forecasting? Bakit natin gagamitin ang forecasting? Okay, bakit tayo magfo-forecast? Bakit natin alamin kung ano yung mga kailangan natin gawin in the future for our operations? What is primarily our purpose? Okay. When is it going to be used? Okay. Not all the time that we always base our plans, we always base our decisions in terms of forecasting. Okay, so this step will provide an indication of the level of detail required in the forecast, the amount of resources, okay, personnel, computer time and money that can be justified, and the level of accuracy which is very necessary. Okay, so kailan natin gagamitin ito? Okay, so for example, again in a basic example, yung the influx of tourists coming in during the time of December, no, uh, probably there will be more customers coming in our business organizations, in our organization. Okay, then uh, they're coming in, there are influx of customers. Are we unmanned? Kulang ba tayo sa tao? So pag kulang ba tayo sa tao, kailangan ba natin ng kumuha ng additional na tao? Okay. So those are the basic decisions in terms of forecasting. So ano yung purpose natin? Okay. Basically yung objective natin, yung objective natin is probably the objective of the organization would be one of the main purpose. But in that certain process, how we able to attain that certain objective, maybe or it can be the purpose of that forecast. How can we able to easily and efficiently and effectively attain that certain objective? That's how would we able to determine the purpose. Then we establish a time horizon. How long? Okay, how short? The forecast must indicate a time interval, keeping in mind that accuracy decreases as the time horizon increases. Pag tumatagal, nakikita natin na nag-iiba yung accuracy, hindi siya accurate yung response natin in terms of forecasting, in terms of planning, in terms of predicting for the operations of the business organization. So we should establish a time horizon, short term or what we call long term. Then number 3 is obtain, clean, and analyze appropriate data. Okay, obtaining the data, okay, acquiring the data, saan mo makukuha, kukunin mo yung information that you have able to gather from different aspects, no? From survey, from historical data, from your operations from coming from the past. Okay, so these data are very significant to the business organization because This can be your basis of your forecast. Once obtained, the data may need to be cleaned to get rid of outliers and obviously incorrect data before analysis. Okay, you determine the correctness. Okay, we should be able to see if it is applied to the business organization. We should be able to see if it is implied, and it can be it does really affect the operations of the business. So forecasting, we should get rid of the errors, yung mga nakikita natin na hindi significant to the informations that are not significant to the business organizations. Yun yung tinatawag natin clean and analyze. Dinedetermine natin yung mga kailangan, yung talagang kailangan natin para sa business organizations in terms of what we call forecasting. Then, select a forecasting technique. Okay. Later on, we will be discussing to you what are those different forecasting techniques that we are going to use. Then you make the forecast, then monitor the forecast errors. Okay, the forecast errors should be monitored to determine if the forecast is performing in a satisfactory manner. If it is not, re-examine the method, assumptions, and validity of data, and so on. Modify as needed and prepare a revised forecast. A forecast error is sometimes based on what we call the actual, no? Based from your prediction and your actual. No? Kunyari, nag-predict ka ng sales mo, nag-predict ka ng sales mo na 15 million yung sales mo at the end of the year. That's your prediction. Nagkaroon ka ng actual. Ang actual mo lang is for about 10 million. So meron kang forecast error na 5 million. So that is on how would we able to determine the what we call forecast error. Okay, the gap. The forecast error is the gap between the the actual forecast, the actual output, and your own prediction. That's what we call the basis of what we call forecast error. So, dinedetermine natin. That's how would we able to summarize yung tinatawag nating forecast errors. What are those uh, activities or uh, items that can be considered as errors. Okay? For example, bakit ka nagkaroon ng error ng forecast mo sa sales? What are those aspects? Madaming aspeto bakit hindi mo naabot yung forecast mo sa sales? Bakit hindi ganoon kataas yung output mo? Okay, basing from your own forecast. Okay. So those are the aspects of what we call forecast errors. Okay, so take note that additional action may be necessary. For example, if demand was much less than the forecast, an action such as price reduction or a promotion may be needed. Conversely, if demand was much more than predicted, increased output may be dangerous. That may involve working overtime, outsourcing, or taking other measures. So, that's the gap. Yun yung tinatawag nating gap between your actual output and your prediction. That's the focus of what we call forecast error. So how can we able to bridge that certain gap between your forecast error? So there are certain aspects that you could be able to get with that certain aspect. For example, nag-predict tayo ng 15 million. 10 million lang yung naabot natin. We have a 5 million for forecast error. So, on that certain basis, nagkaroon tayo sa problema sa sales. Now, how can we able to bridge that certain gap? So, others, anong ginagawa? They continue to promote their product or they sell the product in a discounted prices, in discounted price for them to be able to bridge that certain gap from your actual to your own prediction. Okay? That's how would we able to summarize what we call that's what we call summarize what we call forecast errors. Okay, so those are the different steps, 6 steps in forecasting. Okay, now we go to the different approaches to forecasting. Okay, so in forecasting, there are two general approaches. We have the what we call qualitative and quantitative. Okay, so let's define qualitative method. So qualitative method consists mainly of subjective inputs which often defy precise numerical description. Qualitative techniques permit inclusion of soft information coming in from human factors, personal opinions, and hunches in the forecasting process. Those factors are often omitted or downplayed when quantitative techniques are used because they are difficult or impossible to quantify. Okay. For example, ang example ng qualitative method is those subjective inputs. Yung nakukuha natin, nagagather natin na data coming from individuals. For example, yung mga nagbe-base sila sa experiences. Nagbe-base sila sa experiences from the higher top level management coming in from also from our consumers sa mga knowledge nila in terms of what we call the information that they can be able to gather. Okay? So there are different aspects. Later on, we will try to talk about the qualitative methods. Okay? We have also what we call quantitative method as another general approach. Okay. Quantitative methods involve either the projection of historical data or the development of associative models that attempt to utilize causal variables to make a forecast. We in quantitative methods, we talk about numbers, we talk about information, we talk about data, we talk about statistical data. Okay? Yun yung approach. Yun yung approach. Okay? So, quantitative techniques consist mainly of analyzing objective or hard data. There is an output. Meron silang basis. May actual report. Okay? Yun siya sa quantitative method. So, qualitative naman, in terms about yung knowledge mo about the certain, yung pagkakaalam mo based on your own experiences, based on the information you've gathered from other individuals, from persons. Okay? So yun yung classification ng tinatawag natin qualitative method and quantitative method. Example, qualitative method. Magtatanong ka sa isang tao na may experience about sa operations of the business kung ano yung experience na based on this certain timeline. For example, uh, during ang example of qualitative method is pag madaming customers or pag Christmas season, madaming customer kasi madaming pera. Yun ang nang-i-experience nila. So doon sila nagbe-base ng forecast. That is what we call qualitative methods based on their own or personal opinions based on human knowledge and experience. That is qualitative method. Yung quantitative method naman, nagbe-base sila doon sa financial statement nila. No? Ito yung statement ko during the time of December. Mataas ang sales natin. So definitely, every month, nade-determine mo na during the time of December, mataas ang sales kasi based on your record, madami kang nagbentahan. That is what we call quantitative methods based on historical data, based on what we experienced from the past, based on your financial um, tawag, based on your financial statement. Okay. Next, the following present a variety of forecasting techniques that are classified as judgmental, time series, or associative. Okay. So, what are judgmental forecasts? They rely on subjective inputs obtained from various sources, such as consumer surveys, the sales staff, managers, and executives, and the panel of experts. Quite frequently, these sources provide insights that are not otherwise available. Yun yung tinatawag nating personal opinions. Okay? Based on their personal own experiences. So yun yung sinasabi nating judgmental forecast. Nagbe-base tayo ng forecast from the knowledge of a certain individual or his own personal opinion. Next, We have the what we call time series forecast. Simply attempt to project past experience in the future. These techniques use historical data with the assumption that the future will be like the past. Some models merely attempt to smooth random variations in historical data. Others attempt to identify specific patterns in the data and project or extrapolate those patterns into the future without trying to identify causes of the patterns. Okay? Nagbe-base sila on what have they have been experiencing in the past. Na, that's what we call historical data. Okay, next is what we call associative models. They use equations that consist of one or more exploratory variables that can be used to predict demand. For example, demand for paint might be related to variables such as the price per gallon and the amount spent on advertising, as well as the specific characteristics of the paint. For example, in terms of averages, in terms of statistical data, moving average, naive approach, those are what we call example of what we call associative models. Nagbe-base tayo sa numbers, nagbe-base tayo sa output based on the uh, statistical output. Okay, that is what we call associative models. So there are three forecasts sa varieties. Okay, judgmental forecasts, personal opinion, time series forecast based on historical, based on the past experiences, based on what have they have experienced in the past. Associative models based on used equations. Okay, there are statistical equations used. For example, how would we able to get in an average, di ba? Plus, paano tayo kukuha ng average, di ba? Ipa-plus mo yung mga, ipa-plus mo yung different inputs divided by the total number of inputs. That's how we get the average. Okay. Example, 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 15. Diba? How to get the average? Divided by 3. 5, 15 15 divided by 3 is equivalent to 5. That's average. That is an example of what we call associative models. Okay? So those are the different examples. Okay? Then we include also in our, this should be included in lesson 8, but I'll just add it right now because we have already started about discussing about qualitative forecast. Okay, so under qualitative forecast, we have discussed that it focuses on personal opinions, personal experiences. Ito yung tinatawag nating judgmental forecast. Okay. So, executive opinions, sila yung mga top level management or a group of upper level managers may meet and collectively develop a forecast. Okay? Sila yung gumagawa ng tinatawag nating executive opinions based on their experiences, personal opinions. Yung mga upper level managers are executive opinions. That's how they do in order to create a forecast. This approach is often used as part of a long-range planning and new product development. Okay, so that's what we call executive opinions. Okay, then when we have a top-level decisions whereby we try to gather every executive officers and plan for the business organizations. That is what we call executive opinions. Okay. However, there is a risk that the view of one person will prevail and the possibility that diffusing responsibility for the forecast over the entire group may result in less pressure to produce a good forecast. For example, alam nilang mas uh, in Ilocano term na torturay di mesa nga tao. So nga gaputan na torturay di mesa nga taon, they let him make that certain decision. So nawawalan ng pressure or nadadagdagan ng pressure, yet hindi tayo nakakapag-produce ng magandang forecast. Kasi alam natin na yung tao, may alam naman yung tao. So sila na lang bahala. Parang ganun yung nagkakaroon tayo ng executive opinions. Kasi karamihan, may mga business organizations na ganun din. They base on because of that certain act of fear, nangyayari, oh, ganun yung decision niya, sige, ganun na lang mangyayari. Okay? So those are what we call executive opinions. Then the next one is Salesforce opinions. The Salesforce opinions are the members or our group of on the marketing aspect. Okay, members of the sales staff or consumer service staff are often good sources of information because of their direct contact with consumers. Yung mga experiences nila na nagbabase dun sa mga kaalaman nila based from what they gather from the customers, dun nagbe-base yung forecast nila. Okay? So these are the members of the marketing aspect. Okay? Sila yung gumagawa ng prediction based on based on what they gather information from the consumers. Okay, they are often aware of any plans the customers may be considering for the future. Sila yung nagtatanong, ma'am, ano ba yung mga gusto nyo? Baka pwedeng yun yung basehan natin ng paggawa ng product natin. Yung, they ask question, nagkakandak sila ng information, kumukuha sila ng information coming in from our consumer. Same also with what we call consumer surveys. Based on what do they gather from the customers, these customers will give feedbacks to this Salesforce, which this Salesforce opinions could be their basis of their what we call forecast, coming from that we call consumer surveys. So this will are all basis of what we call qualitative forecast. Okay, so surveys can be expensive and time consuming. In addition, even under the best conditions, surveys of the general public must contend with possibility of irrational behavior patterns. Okay, for much of the consumer's thoughtful information gathering before purchasing a new car is often undermined by the glitter of a new car showroom or high pressure sales pitch. Along the same lines, low response rates to a mail survey should but often don't make the results suspect. Ibig sabihin, yung mga hindi lahat na nagagather natin from our consumers can be a direct information that could help the business organization. Kasi may mga behavior din, attitude din ng mga tao na they do not really give the exact survey or feedback. Kaya, ganun yung nangyayari. So, the obvious advantage of consumer survey is that they can tap information that might not be available elsewhere. So that's the purpose of what we call consumer surveys. Okay. So consumer surveys, we gather information coming in from our customers. Okay. Then the last we have what we call the Delphi method. Okay. The Delphi method is an iterative process intended to achieve a consensus forecast. This method involves circulating a series of questionnaires among individuals who possess the knowledge and ability to contribute meaningfully. Okay? Parang gumagawa na sila ng research. Okay? Gumagawa na sila ng survey in which this is important in order to understand on how would they able to create or develop a system or a product for the business organization. That's the purpose of what we call R&D or research and development. Yun yung dinatawag nating Delphi method. Delphi method is useful for technological forecasting, that is for assessing changes in technology and their impact on an organization. Okay, so that's what we call Delphi method. Okay, so that's the end of week 7 on our topic of forecasting. Okay, so I hope you can able to understand the topic. If there are certain questions or clarifications that you wish to, just comment on the Google Classroom. And if I can be able to I will be able to reinforce certain topics that you cannot able to understand in terms of qualitative or on our topic about forecast. Okay, so in our learning objective, okay, since this week is our midterms, again, you can submit your learning objective until Sunday. Okay, until Sunday. Okay. I'll just try to inform you guys about the our midterm schedule. Okay, I'll just inform you about our midterm schedule. So if there are questions, again, if there are questions, please comment on our Google Classroom learning management system, and I am very glad to answer your questions or that needed reinforcements. Okay, so once again, this is your professor Justin Arsoria. Thank you and good day.